Good evening, all, and welcome to the Mr. Chrome channel. As the sun sets and the moon rises, and the darkness takes place, and the shadows begin to form, as you snuggle into your bed, ever wonder what goes bump in the night? Or those creaks that you blame on the house settling? Tonight, let's dive into the nightmares that you can't seem to wake up from. Welcome to Scary Stories. Strange and scary things. Pioneers used to entertain themselves by telling scary stories. At night, they might gather in somebody's cabin or around a fire and see who could scare the others the most. Some girls and boys in my town do the same thing today. They get together at somebody's house and they turn out the lights and eat popcorn and scare one another half to death. Telling scary stories is something people have done for thousands of years, for most of us like being scared in that way. Since there isn't any danger, we think it is fun. There is a great many scary stories to tell. There are ghost stories, there are tales of witches, devils, boogeymen, zombies, and vampires. There are tales of monstrous creatures and of other dangers. There are even stories that make us laugh at all this scariness. Some of these tales are old, and they are told around the world, and most have the same origins. They are based on things that people saw, or heard, or experienced, or thought they did. Many years ago, a young prince became famous for a scary story he started to tell, but did not finish. His name was Mammalus, and he probably was 9 or 10 years old. William Shakespeare told him about the Winter's Tale. It was on a dark winter's day that his mother, the queen, asked him for a story. "A sad tale's best for winter," he said. "I have one of sprits and goblins." "Do your best to frighten me with your sprits," she said. "You are powerful at it." "I shall tell it softly," he said. "Yond crickets shall not hear it." And he began. There was a man dwelt by a churchyard, but that was as far as he got, for at that moment the king came in and arrested the queen and took her away. And soon after that, Mammalus died. No one knows how he would have finished his story. If you started as he did, what would you tell? Most scary stories are, of course, meant to be told. They are scarier that way. But how you tell them is important. As Mammalus knew, the best way is to speak softly so that your listeners lean forward to catch your words, and to speak slowly so that your voice sounds scary. And the best time to tell these stories is at night, in the dark and the gloom. It is easy for someone listening to imagine all sorts of strange and scary things. My first story tonight is the warm-up. The walk. My uncle was walking down a lonely dirt road one day. He came upon a man who was also walking down that road. The man looked at my uncle, and my uncle looked at that man. The man was scared of my uncle, and my uncle was scared of that man. But they kept walking, and it began to get dark. The man looked at my uncle, and my uncle looked at the man. The man was very scared of my uncle, and my uncle was very scared of that man. But they kept walking, and they came to a big woods. It was getting darker. The man looked at my uncle, and my uncle looked at the man. The man was really scared of my uncle, and my uncle was really scared of that man. But they kept walking, and deeper down into the woods they went. It was getting darker, and the man looked at my uncle, and my uncle looked at the man. The man was terribly scared of my uncle, and my uncle was terribly scared of... Now that I've broken your eardrums. Story number 1. The Thing. Ted Martin and Sam Miller were good friends. They spent a lot of time together. On his particular night, they were sitting on a fence near the post office talking to one another. There was a field of turnips across the road. Suddenly, they saw something crawl out of the field and stand up. It looked like a man, but in the dark, it was hard to tell for sure. Then it was gone. But soon it appeared again. It walked halfway across the road, but it turned around and went back into the field. Then it came out a third time and started toward them. But now Ted and Sam were scared, and they started running. But when they finally stopped, they decided they were being foolish. They weren't sure what had scared them, so they decided to go back and get a better look. Pretty soon they saw it, for it was coming to meet them. It was wearing black pants and a white shirt, and black suspenders. Sam said, "I'm going to try to touch it, then we'll know if it's real." He walked up to it and peered into its face. It had bright, penetrating eyes, sunk deep into its head. It looked like a skeleton. Ted took one look and screamed, and again he and Sam ran, but this time the skeleton followed them. When they got to Ted's house, they stood in the doorway and watched it. It stayed out of the road for a while. Then it disappeared. A year later, Ted got sick and died. Towards the end, Sam sat up with him every night. The night Ted died, Sam said he looked just like the skeleton. Story 2. Cold as Clay. A farmer had a daughter for whom he had cared more than anything on earth. She fell in love with a farmhand named Jim, but the farmer did not think Jim was good enough for his daughter. To keep them apart, he sent her to live with her uncle on the other side of the country. Soon after she left, Jim got sick and wasted away and died. Everyone said he died of a broken heart. The farmer felt so guilty about Jim's death he could not tell his daughter what had happened. She continued to think about Jim and the life they might have together. One night, many weeks later, there was a knock on her uncle's door. When the girl opened the door, Jim was standing there. "Your father asked me to get you," he said. "I came on his best horse." "Is there anything wrong?" she asked. "I don't know," he said. She packed a few things and they left. She rode behind him, clinging to his waist. Soon he complained of a headache. "It aches something terrible," he told her. She put her hand on his forehead. "Why, you are as cold as clay," she said. "I hope you are not ill." And she wrapped her handkerchief around his head. They traveled so swiftly that in a few hours they reached the farm. The girl quickly dismounted and knocked on the door. Her father was startled to see her. "Didn't you send for me?" she asked. "No, I didn't," he said. She turned to Jim, but he was gone. And so was the horse. They went to the stable to look for them. The horse was there. It was covered with sweat and trembling with fear, but there was no sign of Jim. Terrified, her father told her the truth about Jim's death. Then quickly he went to see Jim's parents. They decided to open his grave. The corpse was in the coffin, but around his head they found the girl's handkerchief. Story 3. The White Wolf. The timber wolves around French Creek had gotten out of hand. There were so many wolves the farmers could not stop them from killing their cattle and sheep. So the state put a bounty on them. It would pay a hunter $10 for every pelt he turned in. A butcher in town named Bill Williams thought that was pretty good money. He stopped working as a butcher and started killing wolves. He was good at it. Every year he killed over 500 of them. That came to more than $5,000. It was quite a bit of money in those days. After 4 or 5 years, Bill had killed so many wolves, there were hardly any left in that area. So he retired, and he vowed never to harm another wolf because wolves had made him rich. Then one day, a farmer reported that a white wolf had killed 2 of his sheep. He had shot at it and hit it, but the bullets didn't have any effect. Soon, that wolf was seen all over the countryside killing and running, but nobody could stop it. One night, it came into Bill's yard and killed his pet cow. Bill forgot about his decision never to harm another wolf. He went into town the next morning and bought a young lamb for bait. He took it out into the hills and tied it to a tree. Then he backed off about 50 yards and sat down under another tree with his gun in his lap. He waited. When Bill didn't come back, his friends started looking for him. Finally, they found the lamb. It was still tied to a tree. It was hungry, but it was alive. Then they found Bill. He was still sitting against the other tree, but he was dead. His throat had been torn open. But there was no sign of a struggle. His gun hadn't been fired, and there were no tracks in the soil around him. As for the white wolf, it was never seen again. Thank you for joining me, Mr. Chrome, for Scary Stories. Please let me know if you would like to hear more in the comments. Leave your thoughts and suggestions below. Till next time, let the darkness take control.